Hello, everyone, and welcome to another workshop for the CYOW4 Choose Your Own Way. This project is by the Papercut Arcade Collective, and the person that you may see in front of you on the screen right now, my name is Kay Slater. I use pronouns they, them. You should be able to see a black background with a white person, me in a blue hoodie with gray hair, a pair of oversized large black headphones, and then I have my microphone rig up to the left. So today's topic is learning Twine, or at least getting familiar with the open source tool that is Twine. So today we are going to be introducing the open source tool that is Twine. And Twine is just a program that you can both run off of your browser on your desktop, or you can download it as an application for your computer. It works on both Mac and PC. It doesn't require very much processor at all. You can basically run this off of your phone, and I have done this before. So if you have access to a web browser, you can use this tool. Before we get started, I just wanted to call attention to the fact that open source projects are free or to be shared, but there are people that are worth recognizing. And so this project originated in 2009 by the creator Chris Klimas. I think I said that right. No, Klimas, sorry, Klimas. And since then, there have been many, many collaborators who have worked on the project, who have created different repositories, so different code bases for different versions of it. And it continues to be updated all the time, basically by the volunteer or the commitment of the user community. So when I say free, it really is acknowledging that there is still labor that is going into this, and it's very much a labor of love. So it doesn't really make sense for you to be watching my face through all of this. So I'm going to just share my screen, which I have done. You should be able to see a web browser now with like a corkboard background. And on that corkboard, there's a couple of pins. But basically, if you were to type in Twine into your search engine or go to twinery.org, that's TWINERY.org, you would end up on this page where you would find out that, yes, Twine is an open source tool for telling interactive non-linear stories. So not from point A to B. You don't just flip a page and you follow the story sequentially. You can go in different paths. So that's non-linear storytelling, which is what our CYOW event is all about. So this is a great tool for that. So to the right, you should see a slightly yellow sticky, and there it says you can download it for Windows, Mac. Oh, and I'm sorry for not including Linux, but Linux users, you are also included in being able to download this. And just below that, there is a link that says use it online. And I'm going to click on that right now just so you can see the online interface. And there we go. This interface looks exactly the same as the one on the desktop. I'm going to just bring over my desktop version. There we go. So there is my desktop version. And you will see the only difference is that I have 18 stories on the go. But if I was going to bring this over slightly to the side here, there we go. I have my, my browser on top of the web browser. And you can see, oh, maybe you can't, but it's a mouse type. It says version 2.3.13, which is the most recent version in April of 2021, same as the version that you would be getting in the online version. The major difference that you'll see here is 100% space available. And so because what's happening when you write your stories, when you do your work in the online browser, is that it's saving it into basically your web cache. And so this is a good moment for me to remind folks that if you're somebody who regularly clears your web cache, that you probably want to not do that while you're engaged in using Twine, or you regularly want to archive or download your work so that you have a local copy and you don't get rid of all of your work because it is being just saved into the browser as you're going along. So some people will use this tool as a prototyping tool just for their stories, even if they're doing something in a linear way. If you're not really sure of a way that you want a story to go, or you have different scenes in mind for later in a story, you could be using this tool to create those scenes and then link them up in order later. It really is a great tool. I think that's basically everything I need to tell you about the tool. Let's start using it. So I'm going to keep using the browser tool right now, and I'm just going to go over to the side and I'm going to click plus story. You can change the name of your story at any time. I'm just going to call this Learning Twine right now for our purposes, and add. And what happened really fast there, I'm going to go back out, is it created the story. And there it is. And that big purple dot just basically means that there's one point that has been created in your story right now. It doesn't go anywhere. Arguably, if you wanted to write your entire manuscript in just one place, it would always be one dot there, and you could do that. It basically is a text editor with the ability to do something called markup, which is basically a kind of code that you add to the text, and then your browser reads it, just like HTML. If you were going to be building a website, it's all text, but the browser knows to read those things in a specific way. Twine knows how to take the markup that you learn into, and then converts it basically into HTML so your browser can check it out. That's really the difference. But you don't need to know a lick of code to do this. I'm going to show you the one thing that you need to be able to link all your stories today. And you could barely call it code, but I mean, if you want to say that you now know some markup code afterwards, that's cool too. So we created this for you. It automatically went into it. If you were to go back out, which I did by hitting the home button at the bottom, it just basically lets you play the story as it's happened, tests the story, which has some debug tools, which I'll show you in a minute, and publish to file. So that's what I was talking about before. If you wanted to regularly pull these things down so that you'd have a version of it, this is also a way of, if your story is to the point where it's ready to publish, it's ready to share, for the Papercut Arcade, we actually encourage, even if you don't have a finished project, you're just getting started on something, you have the germ of an idea. If that's where you're at the end of April, we still encourage you to submit it to us as a published file and share the work that you have had a chance to do. Because who knows, your unfinished project may also inspire you to do something later, but it may also inspire somebody else who has a really hard time finishing, just to go, oh, well, maybe I am allowed to be a part of this. And that's a really powerful thing. So you're not just helping yourself by taking that, and it you do have to tap into some bravery to share your stuff. It can be nerve-wracking to share things that is unfinished, but really take heart that you're doing it not just for yourself, but for a community of people who could be creating things. So, and then rename story, as I told you, duplicate and delete. So you can check out all those things there. While we're in this window, before I click on this one more time, I did want to show that over here under language, and I'm not going to click on it right now because it does refresh everything and I'd like to keep this up. But if English is an additional language, and you would prefer this interface to be in another language, you can click on that. And that's, again, those repositories I was talking about earlier, those people who are dedicating their time. Twine has been translated into, I think, 18 different languages. So if you feel more comfortable working in another language, you can definitely change the language of Twine to suit your needs. Okay, let's go into the Twine story. And so what you can see here is that we've got a passage. This was created when we created the new story, and that's where I was saying it's basically a text editor that you could just go into this, and I'm going to click on it. I double clicked on it, and you could just write your manuscript. Write your manuscript. Amazing things happen. I can't spell the end. And so that's it. you could just write your whole story like this, and then you could publish, and then you'd have your manuscript as an HTML page. So there's arguably a reason to use this tool beyond even just non-linear storytelling. It's something that you could use on the go if you wanted to be building a story and then quickly output a website or a web page. But for our purposes for CYOW, we want it to be an interactive story. We want to do something here. And so when I was telling you about the one piece of code that you need, I'm going to link two passages together, and you can do that in two different ways. So the first one is I'm going to go the beginning as the title of this passage. And I'm going to click down here in the body, and I'm going to go, this is the beginning. And then I'm going to go, take me to the end. If you were just going to leave it like that, and I'm going to click off into the gray area on the side, so you've got the active text editor that pops up in the middle. If you click anywhere outside of that page, it takes you back to the gridded workspace. And then when you bring your cursor over top of it, you'll see a flyout that happens with the garbage edit. So instead of double clicking, you could definitely click edit, play, and then an ellipses that has some more information over here. But for my purposes, I'm just going to go play because I wanted to show you what would happen. And there you go. There's that web page. And that's the text that I wrote. This is the beginning. Take me to the end. Because I didn't add any markup text, I can click on this and it should be, I think there should be an action there, but because I didn't add that one thing that I'm going to show you right now, it is still just text. If I go back to, oh, apologies, I've got a couple things open here to show you. There we go. If I go back to my passage, and I'm going to click on pencil this time to bring it up, all you need to do to link passages is to use something called a square bracket. And there you go, I put it in a weird place, but there's the square bracket. And you can find that in, if you're on a North American style keyboard, that's in the upper right-hand corner of your letter keyboard. And so if you put two of those together, it tells Twine, I'm going to create a link. In HTML, you would go, you'd have an angled bracket, HERF, an anchor reference tag. But for this, you just need the two square brackets. You'd bring take me to the end. Whoops, I've deleted it. There we go. And so you could just close it, but I want my passage to be named something else. And so I'm going to use something called the pipe, which is just an up and down line. The pipe is the shift or second version. So the thing that you can do as an alternative, if you hit shift and then forward slash. And forward slash, same thing. It's actually the third in the sequence of where the square brackets are. And so it's all that corner over there. That's really all you need to know. And I'm going to call it the end. And I'm going to close this up with two square brackets over there. And so you can see that closed it and that opened it. So just like a quote, if you were going to have a quote. Oh, why is it not taking me back to the beginning? There we go. There we go. So there's the beginning and there's the end. So let's check this out again. Click over to the side and look at that. It's created the arrow and now there's a new passage there. If I click on this, the end, and I can go, this is the end for real. And so let's now check that out. If we go to play, now it's refreshed, and now that has become a link. So this is the beginning, take me to the end. This is the end for real. If you wanted to restart, or your player wanted to restart, or your reader wanted to restart, they could just refresh the page, and it takes them back to the beginning. Out of the box, so without you having to change anything, there is also a little arrow that happens to the left here in this version of the program that I'm using, and you can go undo and it brings you back. There is also additional things that you can add or you can change to bring you back to the beginning. You know, while I've got you here, you don't have to do this at all, but I just wanted to show you an example of some code here. And I will distill this in just a second. So click, restart. And I'm going to go, I think it's restart. Pretty sure that's what it is. I'm going to go restart. Okay. What I have done there, and you don't have to remember this because there are there are how-to guides for all of these things. And so this is a really full way of using Harlow, which is the version of Twine that I use. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. But they've got example stories. Down to the side here, there's the different functions or markup that you can use here. And if we went down to restart, I thought it was near the top. There we go, restart. So under navigation over here to the left, restart. And there we go, also known as reload. And there was the code that I had memorized there. You could just copy paste that, bring it back into your document. And there we go, replace. And then that would be ready to go. This means when you click the string or the word restart, and that's why it's in those brackets there, which it is there in my passage, it's going to tell it to do the code, which is restart. And so I'm going to show you what happened there by going to, oh, sorry, I'm going to go back to here. I'm going to play. Take me to the end, and there we go, restart. And there it's back to the beginning again. So you don't have to do that. I showed you, you could just refresh. You don't need to have that code in there. You could just have the story go from A to B to B to C or D. And then at the end, they could just click refresh. And you could write that into Learning Twine, sorry, into your story. Here, I'm going to get rid of all that. I'm going to go refresh, whoops, refresh your browser to start again. And now, take me to the end. And then what you can do is you can go up and just hit refresh. Oh, no, you cannot do that. Right. Okay, so in the new version of Harlow, they have done an update since 2019. A lot of work was done, actually. Basically, at the start of the pandemic, Leon, the creator, went back in and basically finished a lot of things that had been just waiting for time for him to have some time. And you can read about that in the Harlow manual. He talks about how the pandemic has gave him time, but also put quite a bit of pressure on him and the maker community to kind of finish these projects as they felt, that pressure and that shifting time sands to do things before the end times. And so he's put in a lot of work. And this is a good opportunity for me to say, you really should check out the manuals, regardless of the format that you use, because there's a lot of information there and gives you a lot of feedback on what you're doing, especially if you're trying to troubleshoot. So I have it open to the section in the manual that says restart. And down here, you can see in details, normally Harlow stories will attempt to preserve the current game state across browser page reloads. This macro will suppress this behavior, guarantee that the story begins from the beginning. So what that means is that when I'm hitting refresh in this version of Harlow, it's just basically taking one of our boxes, one of our passages. Here we go, right here. And if you had a whole bunch of changes and you were using a whole bunch of these macros or code for things, for states to change in the story itself, when you hit refresh, it basically takes it back as if you were loading that for the first time. And so you do actually need, in this version, so I lied earlier, you do need the square brackets as well as this code to be able to refresh your story and bring it back to the beginning. So we're going to go into the end passage here. And I'm going to bring this down here, and I'm going to go restart. Whoops, I'm going to spell that right. There we go, restart. And the reason I have to put that there is because we've told it to have the command of change the word restart into when you click it. This is also something else I haven't talked about before, is in the newest version of Twine, the 2.3.13, I think that's what it is. I shouldn't have brought that up, but I think that's the newest one, is that when you have the option to toggle on and off the tooltips. And so if you are trying something and you're not actually sure what you're doing, you can toggle that on. And then when you go up to the macro code, actually toggle it on, there we go. You bring it to the macro code, and there we go. Now you've got the tooltip of it telling you all the information that you can find in the manual there. So yeah, it's great. It's great to be using the most recent version. It's another argument really why to be using the website version, because it's always got the most recent version of Twine running. Okay, I'm going to now show you my own Twine. So this is my desktop version. Again, it looks very similar, but it's got all of my messy stories in various states of completion. I'll make a new story when I want to test some code, because I'm a little bit deeper into using Twine, and so I do use a bit more code. This one right here, you can see it's basically just a linear path. It just goes from this one to this one to this one to this one to this one. This one over here, which is the project I showed last year, and I am working on it again this year, it's got lots of them, and they're in various different directions based on where I have put them, so that I can make the space look the way that I need it to. But for today, what I did was I created one that's called Learning Twine. There we go. And I have a couple of different branching points here. We start at the beginning. We go to either a new or an old project. I've then said that either of those choices, so there's my A-B choice. That's my first choice. I start at here and then A-B. Here, the A-B choice will actually take you to the same place as if you had gone here. And you can absolutely do that. You can have as many passages taking you to the same place, which can be really interesting if you take somebody on a detour for the story. So if you were rewriting, say, Red Riding Hood, and instead of her going directly to Grandma's house, or even just directly to meeting the wolf the first time, you could say that maybe she goes to her friend Paula's house and have a whole story that happens there. But once she's visited Paula, perhaps Red Riding Hood could then meet the wolf, as if Red had decided to go right to the forest, and that's your A-B choice. And so you absolutely can have multiple passages leading to the same place. Down here, I wanted to show that what I've got is that this is the end, right? Even though I've got all these things here, the arrows, and you can see the head of the arrow points from which passage it needs to go to. All the endpoints of the game, there's nothing that leads past this endpoint. And so there's an example of a story where I went over to here and I had a few extra paths before you could get here, or you could go back to this path where three options are leading here until you get to the end. So I only have one ending in the story. You could have multiple endings where there's only one way to get there. Or if you want to keep things kind of more simple and manageable, maybe you're going to take people on a more interesting narrative path. Or maybe you've got different poetry that you've written, and somebody's going to follow a path through a certain poem before they get to an end, and then they refresh and they can walk through another poem. If you had a philosophical question that you had folks want to do, and you wanted to lead them through different questions as you went through, it could be their choice that leads them through the questions. It doesn't have to be a story. It could be however you want to lead the person who is engaging with your project to whatever end you take them to. It really is up to you how you use this project. I'm going to show you what I've done for this one. I'm going to press play. And there we go. So again, the only markup that I used were the square brackets for this one, as well as the restart code that I showed you there. And that's going to be in the last screen. So you are here. What do you want to do? Which was just the text. And then I made two anchor tags here. think because this is the first screen, this is the first time I'm going to go back and forth, or the only time, and then otherwise we'll go all the way through. But there you go. There was my anchor. So the square brackets, it says make something new. There's a pipe, and then it says new, which was the name of the passage, and then close the square. Then I pressed carriage return. I went to the next line. Same thing, square brackets, convert an old story into a digital project, pipe, old, and then the square brackets. And so you could do as many of these as want. You could keep going. You could have 15 different paths people could take, no problem. Okay, let's go back to my browser. And there we go. So you've got the two choices. Are you going to make something new, or are you going to make something old? I'm going to make something new today. You make something new. You decide you're going to write a new story, and after taking a recent workshop on Twine, hooray, you decide to use it as your prototyping tool, writing directly into the program and building story forks as you go along. You spend the month of April 2021 writing, and you have a few different endings for your project. You're ready to decide in which format you want to present your final project. Do you choose Twine, or do you choose pen and paper? Because even if you prototyped your story in Twine, it doesn't mean that you can't then print out the story that you wrote or color a bunch of pictures. And then however you decide to do that format, that's up to you. Today, though, because we chose Twine, we're in Twine, we're going to choose Twine. I also happen to know it's the shortest path through this story. So you choose Twine, you decide to present your final project using Twine. You run it a few times in test mode, and you try out the different A, B, or A, B, C choice paths you have created. And they all get to an ending. Excuse me. Super. Yep, that cleared it. You're ready to share it. You output the file under the home logo. So I showed you in the far corner, there was that home to take you back to the menu. And you send it to the Papercut Arcade at submissions@thepapercutarcade.ca. Then you cross your fingers. So that was only one path there. I only gave the one option. And then we're at the end. A few days later, you receive an email saying your project has been approved. You get an invitation to a workshop at the end of the month to help you write your artist statement and get all the pieces in place so that the Papercut Arcade can show your work. You receive a note that the collective will work with you on content warnings. You decide to reread your work before the event to check for any content that you want to discuss with them in the days ahead so that you can show your work to an all-ages internet audience. You mark the date in your calendar and start working on a bio and a few sentences that describe how you think your project is related to the theme Blackout. You're excited to be part of this project and proud to show your work, even if it isn't fancy, completely finished, or if it's your first work. You email your friends to invite them to the event and get ready to join the presentation on May 22nd with your fellow creators. The end. So I wrote this obviously as something that we could put as an example onto our website because I want people to be excited and to be encouraged to create something for our future event. But if you wanted to restart and see what would happen if, again, you were to create something new, but this time you chose pen and paper, you could follow that path. For this one, I've said you've decided to do that. You write out your story, assemble your booklet, you're ready to share it, but you're not sure how. So same as before, the text itself says you send an email to the Papercut Arcade, but this time we took a detour because there's an extra section. The project wasn't ready to go. And so in this story, they contact us to say what's next. And then we say, a few days later, you receive an email from the Papercut Arcade. They offer you a few different ways that you can share your project. Because you have an old camera, you decide to take pictures of your project. You now can decide if you want to simply share the pictures with the file names, including the page numbers, or if you want to put these pictures into Twine. You were surprised to find that you could add images to Twine. And so for this one, same thing. If I was to click put pictures into Twine, it takes you back on the end path of that previous story to you published on Twine, you send your project to us, and you're approved. This time, let's go, you decide to photograph your pen and paper project. You decide to photograph your project. When you have all the images finished, you name each image file with the page number it shows. You zip the images along with a text file that explains your project to the Papercut Arcade Collective so that they can help you get the project up online. You send it in an email and cross your fingers that your project will be included in the final project. And then again, that takes you to the end screen and it's completely the same. So that was a really simple Twine project. I did this right before today's workshop in about 10 minutes. I'm very familiar with Twine, and so I was able to obviously finish it with some alacrity because I had that comfort. But really, it was just me writing these different scenarios and then putting the square brackets at the end to bring them together. It's really easy when you, here, I'm going to go back to my browser again, and I'm going to go back to our web version here. It's really easy if all you do is when you're in the passage, you just write the code. So I'm going to go take me to the middle this time. If you create it like this, boom, it creates your passage. But what if you're not really sure the path that you want to take? Remember when I was saying you have a scene and you're not really sure when you want people to go there? Well, down here on the far right, there's a green button that says plus passage. You can do it. It's not connected to any of these things yet. And so here you can go the almost end. And in here, I'm going to go, we're almost finished, but I'm not sure when we'll get here, is the story that I put in here. Maybe I know I want it to get to the end after this point. And so again, I can go, let's go to the end, pipe the end, and then there you go. It's now created that link. There's no way to get to that passage because we haven't figured it out yet, but it is going to get you to the end. In some cases, it's actually encouraged that you write your endings before you even write out your story, because that gives you a way of trying to take a big idea and making sure that folks can actually get to where they need to get at the end so that your story can end. And so by creating a beginning passage and maybe one or two endings that folks can actually get to, that allows you to really focus on what way they can get in there before you get into the nitty gritty, before your story gets so big that you can't really, figure out how they're going to get to that end point. And then you can build from there, again, by creating those extra passages, or when you have all those passages in the middle, starting to figure out which decisions make sense that you would get to any of these parts in the story. So now what we want to do is we want to go back into the middle, and I think we want to go from the middle to the almost end. So we're going to go to the middle and go, this is the middle. Let's head towards the end. And you know what? I can't remember what that passage was called. And that's okay, because what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go test, or I'm going to go forgot. And then what's going to happen is it's going to create a new passage. And that's okay. What you can now do is you can delete that. And you see how it creates an X now? So we have a link. We've told Twine that we want to take it somewhere, but we forgot the name of the passage, or we haven't written that passage yet, or we didn't want to create one out of there. We want to show that it's unfinished. And that's a good way that if you do create the link and you're kind of rushing towards something, to show, oh, right, I have to still write that, rather than auto creating a passage and going, oh yeah, that's all finished. So that's a nice visual indicator. Well, now I can go, oh, right, it was the almost end. The capital was on the first, but the rest of the word is lowercase. And case does matter here. If I was to go back to this link and I was going to type the almost end in sentence case, or with the first letter of each word capitalized, it would then create a whole new passage. And that's a cool way of actually being able to do just small deviations. If you wanted to have two versions that are almost the same, you could then yourself internally, because nobody's going to see the name of these passages, use the letter case to go, this is just a slight deviation. I recommend you use numbers instead of that because that's kind of hard for you to remember as you start to have lots of passages, but that's something you definitely could do. Okay, so just the capital of the almost end, the almost end, and there we go. So now our story is fully linked. If we went to the beginning, we could go right to the end, we could go to the middle, and then the middle takes us along that path, or we go to the end. Let's check it out. Press play. This is the beginning. Take me to the middle. This is the middle. Let's head towards the end. We're almost finished, but I'm not sure when we're going to get there. Let's go to the end. This is the end for real. Refresh your browser to start again. And there we go. Oh. Well, this is good to show this. I don't know why it's not refreshing. Okay, well, those are the things that you're going to be testing as you go through. So you've written your whole story and you expect it's supposed to be a certain way. And this is, I didn't mean for this to happen, but now let's troubleshoot this. So refreshing is supposed to happen. I don't actually know why it's not doing this because it is supposed to go back to the end. But if you can go to the how-to documents, the documentation online, you could just go into your browser and type in Twine, how do I restart my story? And you'll find a whole bunch of different people who have asked your question. It's very hard for you to find that somebody hasn't asked your question. I very rarely look for an answer that I can't find that somebody else has asked in the last 12 years that people have been using this tool. This is a good time for me to actually say the difference between the versions. And so you've checked out Twine now, you're ready to go, you've installed the new version, or sorry, you've installed Twine and you're ready. Down here under formats, you'll see there's a whole bunch of things here. It defaults as Harlow. And so the markup code that I've showed you today, and this link, which I will link to at the end of this workshop so you can check it out. This is the documentation that I use, uses the code base Harlow. And so when you load up, you don't actually have to change anything. It's going to be Harlow. But they have a whole bunch of different other formats that you can use. And I'm going to quickly go through those right now. There at the top, chatbook, you'll see Chris Klimas, who was the creator of Twine. And so you might be inclined to go, oh, well, he was the original creator. I should use chatbook. And you can. I'm not going to switch it here, but all it does is it means that the markup code is different. I recommend that if you are somebody who isn't comfortable coding, and even though I've been using this program for quite a few years now, and I like Harlow, and I do have some ability to use CSS and some very limited JavaScript knowledge, I don't actually have to tap into that very often when I'm using Harlow. If you have a lot of JavaScript knowledge, you might enjoy using the very popular SugarCube. SugarCube was one of the first deviations of Twine, and it has a very large user base. If you are looking for documentation, you're going to find years and years and years of documentation. But a lot of the customization is going to be JavaScript. And so when things break, you're really going to have to understand the JavaScript to try and figure out what has gone wrong.
Yeah, I like to recommend the chapbook format for Twine too. That's the one that I've used in the past so far for my projects for the CYOW exhibitions. Chapbook is really geared towards authors and writers and kind of has this focus on readability that I really like. You can still do some customization, like it helps if you know some styling and some JavaScript. You can get a bit more out of it, but it doesn't have quite the full feature set that Harlow or the others might have, which have been, they're further ahead on the development schedule. Chapbook was started later by Chris, the main developer, and yeah, he's really kind of kept it tight and lean and focused on that kind of readability and usability. It has a really cool testing debug suite that you can use as well. It's kind of built in that I really like. Yeah, I highly recommend it, especially if you care about it, your story kind of having this kind of book-like styling and feel that is geared towards readability.
If you are a developer and you really want no strings, you want basically just the ability to start writing a story, but you want to be able to customize everything. You want to use JavaScript, you want to build it basically from ground zero. Snowman is one of the most recent formats that has come out, and it's considered to be the most open version of Twine. I definitely don't recommend, if you are not a developer, to use this version. Harlow is excellent. I've created some really complex stories with lots and lots of different macros built into it just by using the Harlow how-to document. And yes, it looks daunting because it's huge. It would probably be a manual all on its own if it was printed. But the creator of Harlow, who is Leon Arnault, or it could be Arnott. Welcome to the internet. I'm not actually sure. But so that's Arnott. He wrote Harlow, and he has a very conversational way of building this manual. And so I can't say enough good things about Harlow. I really enjoy the format. So if you have any questions while you're using Harlow, you can definitely reach out to me and I could probably help you find an answer. If you're delving into the world of JavaScript or you've decided to build your own framework, I'm afraid you're probably going to have to reach out to another member of our collective, or you're just going to have to check out online some of the documentation that's there, or you could pop onto Discord. And so this is our Discord right now on the CYOW Blackout, where we're all discussing our projects. But over here, you can see I subscribe to Twine Games, and I'm part of that community. And over on the left-hand side here, there is Help, and you can see the channel Sugar Cube, Harlow, Chatbook, Snowman, and even just Twine 1 formats. So when Twine was just starting, before it had branched off into different formats, you got that. Compiling, tooling, general Twine talk, community events, and if you're to pop in there, you can see there's our event right there, encouraging folks from this community to come and make with us. So there's lots of different ways that you can get help. But really, my biggest advice when you get started is just to keep it simple. To do it in the default Harlow, to just start a new story and just try it out. Just do an A-B. Don't even have a branching option at the beginning. The beginning, the end, and then go from there. I think that's everything that I wanted to cover in here. You know what? I think there's one last thing, and I wanted to just show the CSS. So CSS, which is cascading style sheets. If you're a designer or an artist, you're probably more familiar with CSS than you are JavaScript. And I wanted to show you that, yes, there is CSS in Twine, and that's located down at the far left beside the house icon that takes you back to the main menu, the name of your story, and then there's a menu that you can twirl out. In here, edit story JavaScript and edit story style sheet. And so that is where, if you knew your CSS, if you wanted all your links to be a different color, if you wanted every time somebody found a specific class, which you could code into your different passages to show up bigger or smaller or brighter or whatever, you could do that in the style sheet. So that does give you the option, and I'm going to click on it to show you. And there, because I don't have any custom CSS, I haven't written anything in here, it's empty. You would have to start from scratch and add the CSS. You don't have to touch this to have a story that will work. It's very easy to read. The black, the white, and the blue are considered best practices for the internet. Folks with low vision or with blindness are going to be able to read your information quite easily, and a screen reader is going to be able to pick it up. So it's quite accessible without you touching anything. On top of that, Harlow itself has quite a bit of styling already in there. So if you wanted to italicize your text, there we go, style markup. And so you're feeling really confident, you've got your square brackets down, you're ready to do something a little bit different. And there it is. The markup code for italics is just 2 backslashes beside each other around the text, and it will italicize your text.
So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the style markups. And although it looks the same, why it's better to use one or the other over the other of these markup options. So emphasis ends up looking like italics when you use a normal browser, a normal text browser. Strong emphasis looks like bold. They are not necessarily the same in other contexts, though. Particular if you're talking about a reading program that will read out loud to a visually impaired person, they might come up with some other way to let you know that this is emphasized. Bold doesn't really mean anything. Italics doesn't really mean anything. They're legacy items from the printed word. Since we're not limiting ourselves to the printed word anymore, it's probably a better idea to actually say what you mean rather than just use the trappings of meaning.
All right, I think that's everything that I have for the recorded portion. I'm going to turn off the video now and host some Q&A. But if you have any questions after checking out this video, please pop onto our Discord channel, come onto our Facebook group, ask us questions, and I can't encourage you enough, just get started on a project. You really don't have to have something finished and polished to participate in our project in May. All right, good luck and have fun making.